everyone, and welcome to Ultiori. So, I want to sit down and talk about something because I like talking about things. I want to do more videos where we actually talk about stuff to have discussions, because I like that, you know? So, those of you in the comments who want to join the discussion, go ahead. So, we're going to be talking about Raya. I know I kept calling her Raya. Her name is Raya, from Raya and the Last Dragon. And yes, I understand I say some words differently. I'm sorry. I'm still learning, like, proper English. And yes, I listened to those of you who said that the plural of woman is women. Even though they're spelled almost the same, you pronounce the O like an I for the plural, which makes no sense. English is so hard. Anyway, let's talk about Raya and the Last Dragon. I didn't really understand why people didn't like it. I mean, I know why I had an issue with it. I love the movie. Don't get me wrong. I love the movie. I did a review of it. You guys can see that before you watch this one. It was actually nice. I did enjoy it. I didn't think I would, but I did. You can see the full review there. But of course, there were issues with it. Like the message, that was one of the biggest ones for me. The dragon design and the way she spoke, that was annoying. I did get to like her later on because, well, I think for what she represented and her naivety, it made her a little bit more relatable in that way of things, but she was also alive back then, so she must have known that humans weren't like that, but back then humans were. But then where did the things come from if everyone trusted each other? It's really confusing. There are a lot of things I have to ask, but because the movie grants different questions to answer, that's kind of what makes me intrigued, and I actually respect things that make me intrigued. Okay, so I found an article on Cinema Blend because I'm looking for people who actually didn't like it so I could get a different perspective and see what they said. So this guy said that, or a girl, okay. She said that she grew up watching Disney movies and she was really excited when she saw Raya and the Last Dragon, or at least the dragon in it, because it looked more like a badass version of Mulan, which, I mean, kinda is, actually. The girl with this dragon who's comedic relief kinda sounds like Mulan. Okay, and then she said, but then I saw the movie? Oh boy, here we go. So we do agree on something, this girl and me. The animation was beautiful, and I think across the board, people say that there's one thing they can say about Raya and the Last Dragon is that it was beautiful. The animation was beautiful. We've come such a long way when it comes to imagery and animation. So the first thing was that the modern talk took her out of the element. She said it was a kid's movie, but it took her out of the timepiece because this is supposed to be in, what is the setting anyway? The future? The hits? I don't even know. Like, they don't really make it clear. It almost sounds like this is a kind of dystopian future. You're not really clear what you're looking at. The fact that they have mammals tells us that it might be around the time we exist in our real world, but it might also be the future because a lot of those modern day animals that we can recognize, like beetles and monkeys and stuff, have other accessories on them that obviously look way more fantastical. Doesn't mean that they are in the future in our real world. Doesn't mean this is set in the real world. It's obviously not. But I almost feel like it is. The way that she spoke and the way that, you know, things look. The humans all generally look almost the same. So I can imagine, just like we started all as the same. We evolved from one species. We all looked darker in color. We were lower to the ground. Like, there were certain things about our ancestor, like that one ancestor that every person came from, where they looked exactly alike, and then they went to different regions and spread out and started looking different. I think, like, somebody was having a discussion on YouTube or somewhere else where in the future, they were theorizing that that would happen again. Like, all the continents that broke up, eventually they're gonna go back together. It's probably gonna be thousands, millions, and millions of years if we're even still on the planet at that time and the sun doesn't blow up. But if that were to happen and humans were still around, we would all come back around and become one big species. You don't believe me? Take a whole bunch of purebred dogs. Chihuahuas, poodles, Airedale terriers, golden retrievers, boxers, French bulldogs, border collies, huskies, malamutes, German shepherds, Rhodesian ridgebacks, like every single purebred dog you can think of, and put them on an island by themselves without any human intervention or whatever. First of all, the little dogs would die off because that's something that humans bred into the domestic wolf. They bred them to be smaller, more docile. And, you know, we like to mutate things and play around with things, and we have all these dogs that are sick and undeveloped because we've inbred them and bred them down to fit our eyes and what we like to see and what we want. But if natural selection were to take back over with these animals, those little dogs would die off because they can't survive. They're too small. They would either get attacked by other other dogs with higher prey drives, or by other animals or the elements. Their bones are also much weaker. A lot of them, like the bulldogs, like the English bulldog and pugs, they would die because if they fall in the water, they can't swim. Like, there's just so many things. So all the big dogs would be left. And give it a few decades, and you go back to that island and you see all of the descendants of those dogs, they would all look like one species of mongrel. You wouldn't be able to tell. You may be able to see some trace features of German shepherds and whatever, but guess what? They would look like wild dogs. They would look like African wild dogs or dingoes, and most of those dogs, guess what they would end up looking like? Medium to larger sized, short hair depending on the environment they're in, and erect ears. Because the ear infection thing also affects floppy ear dogs. You don't see floppy eared mammals in the wild. Not really, and if you do, they're really, really rare. So, that being said, the same would happen with humans, or any animal rather. You leave them long enough alone, and eventually everybody comes back together until we all breed and mix with each other and become one whole breed. And I think this is kind of what it looked like was happening in Raya and the Last Dragon. I could be wrong. I don't even know what language they were speaking. I have to look that up. So when she says the time period, I don't totally agree with that because I don't think it was ever really specified what time period it's in. So how would you have a problem with the time period if we don't even know what time period it is? Unless I missed something. I could have missed something. Was there actually a time period back then when dragons roamed the earth? Because I'm curious as to when that was. For all we know, when it did happen and we just missed out on it. But I get what she's saying. It's not really that much of a deal breaker for me. I understand, like, in certain aspects of a new world, you want things to be new. People seem to underestimate kids and think that they're stupid and they have to be talked to like they're babies all the time, which is not totally fair. As a baby, I didn't understand a lot of complex stuff, but I learned to appreciate it as I grew up. And I asked my parents, because, you know, I could engage in discussion with my parents. What does this mean? And sometimes I would get that whole phrase, when you're older, we'll tell you. Or I would just grow up a little bit faster intellectually because I was forced to conform with the intellectual integrity of the people who were speaking on screen. Like, cartoons weren't, I mean, it's so amazing how a difference of 10 years makes with cartoons and how they used to be and how they are now. Nowadays, it does seem like cartoons are tackling more adult themes, and I feel like Raya also does this in a way. So I'm not so bothered by the phrases that they use. Some of them are kind of cringy, but, you know, it is a kid's movie, and you do have to dumb it down, I guess, for the children. The next thing that she said was that the characters were underdeveloped. I understand where she's coming from with that. However, I still enjoyed them. I knew that there was more of a backstory. For example, if someone was to take, like, the big burly character that came from that snowy land, I forgot his name, but he has an interesting story back there. I would have loved to see his backstory. As a mini movie or a mini series or whatever, I would have loved to see the baby's backstory. The little kid on the boat. I don't even know their names, but I know who they are. I remember them because their life was so colorful. And I feel like in your mind, you can imagine a whole adventure with just those characters. So yeah, they weren't rounded and fully developed, but with how many characters there were, I don't think it was necessary for the story to develop those characters. When she says that the baby doesn't just get up and decide to do cons once their parents are turned to stone, there has to be some story for that. Yeah, but if we went into every backstory for every character, the movie would be endless. We would have this 4-hour movie, and that's not realistic. Their story, the side character story, was not integral to the main story. It's kind of like Bill and Ted's Adventure, like when they had to go around their little phone box and pick up all those people. They didn't get all the backstory to those guys. I mean, you can say that it's historical figures so you understand, but there was more to their characters, but that wasn't what the movie was about. It was about uniting people and just getting people along for the ride on your journey. This is kind of what this was like. Despite not knowing about people, I think that even if this wasn't done intentionally, not knowing about someone, you don't have to know someone's backstory or whole backstory to appreciate them as a person and to give them a chance. That was the point I think they were making. So the next thing was that the main conflict felt resolved too easily. I do agree. There were times when I was like, man, they're really lucky with those stones. I remember at the end of the movie, they had the stone go out. The light and the stone went completely out. Yet it's shining again in the next scene, conveniently, so that those monster things just, you know, really? Even Raya, when she was mad and she took up the stone, I'm like, that's a small-ass stone, dude. Like, usually the size of it depends. Like, you know, the monster still, I don't know, that part made no sense to me, and I think it was just too convenient. I would have liked it, like, while they were all preparing for whatever they were doing in the end, for one to have been turned in stone. They only all just turned into stone at the end, right when they're deciding to come together, and not before that. It would have been more meaningful if one of the characters or two of the characters, as they're fighting, like the little boy, for example, the captain, while he was telling people, he was trying to save people when Raya was killed, and all those people are running and panicking when he's trying to save them and say, hey guys, I love his character, by the way, so mature for his age, you could see that. When he's running or ushering the people to run away, I felt like him as a kid sacrificing himself to help others and turning into stone. That would have been something that would have been interesting, but you know, they wouldn't have played it that way because Raya was too busy fighting the other girl. She wouldn't have seen it, and she has to see it for it to mean something. But no, she doesn't. The others could have seen it. We could have seen it as the audience. We could have seen what the stakes were. We could have seen how all of this resulted in people dying. Good people. They could have told her later, hey, he didn't make it. And that would have been one of the driving forces for her to do what she did, sacrificing herself. But she had to be the one to take the first step. And the thing is, even as the main character, I hate when they do that because it doesn't always have to be the main character to take the first step. The article writer goes on to saying that Namari, that's the name of the other girl who betrayed Raya in the beginning, and she said that I feel like that would have made her story a bit more compelling to see that struggle more clearly prior to this meeting, instead of her seemingly making a last-minute decision when she sees those ore pieces in Raya's bag. I think there was a point to why they did that, because she is struggling, but it was to surprise the audience, which, I mean, as adults, we see it coming. It's not really a surprise, but I get why they did that as well. Maybe they wanted to hide that from us. Because in the beginning, remember, when Namari was being friends with Raya, she was betrayed. She let her guard completely down for Namari, and Namari betrayed Raya. And that's exactly, they basically reinvented this because the whole theme throughout the movie is trust. Trusting others, making the first move to not judge others so quickly and to trust each other. And somebody has to make the first move to have faith in people. And it was the same scene as the beginning of the movie when Namari turned on Raya. And I think that's what they were trying to display so that we could also feel like Raya and have that reaction like, really, bitch? To make us angry at her when she accidentally killed Sisu, to make us feel the rage, because we got to fall in love with the dragon afterwards, to make us feel the rage that Raya felt, and that righteous indignation that she was right, and that trusting people is a waste of time. We had to feel that too. If we had been made privy to Mari's struggle when she was by herself or how she was feeling, that would have made us empathize way too much with her, and so the shock value of her betraying Raya a second time wouldn't have hit us as badly, and we were supposed to be relating more to Raya because she's the one who's trying to overcome this reluctance to trust people. We're supposed to be walking through the story and journey through her shoes, not Namari's, because we have to learn to trust. We're seeing things through her eyes. We're also living in that, man, should I really trust this person? I've been burned by this person before. I trusted them again. They burned me again. It's so hard to trust people. They're challenging you as the audience to overcome that despite what has happened to you. And then she goes into Sisu's character being too kiddish, which I agree, but they are aiming this movie towards kids, so I get it. And then there's the Raya, the main character, being almost too mistrusting of the world. Wouldn't you be too? Like, if that happened to you from you're a kid, your father talks about trusting everyone. And her first real hand in the head, slap to the face, cold water ass thing experience is her trusting someone like her father asked her to, even though she was kind of ambivalent about it. And she was like, Dad, are you sure? Because these people want to kill us for this. Like, they don't even care about us. They care about that stupid gem. Despite all of that, she decided to follow along with her father and trust this girl. She even made the first step to try and mend things. And this girl stabbed her in the back. And then her father died as a result of it. Not just that, but the entire world. Wouldn't you be mistrusting? Like, how is that too mistrusting? Like, I know a lot of people, like, that's like you dating someone, boy, girl, whatever, and you love this person, and they cheat on you, or they spread rumors about you, or they just do some heinous shit, and you like, you know what? No, I'm done with this person. You go on, you're kind of like, now I don't know if I can trust people. Now I don't know if I can give my whole heart to people. But you meet someone else and you fall in love with them, and you're like, I don't want to get burned like I got burned before. And this person's like, you can trust me. And so you're like, you know what? It's not fair for me to punish this person for what the person before me did. I'm going to trust them. And they burn your shit worse than the person before you did. And then after that happens enough times, you're like, okay, fuck this. I am done. I don't fuck with people. Like, after a while, you're gonna be like, dude, what? Like, and that's part of what I have an issue with the message, because I get where they're coming from and they're not wrong, but human nature doesn't work like that. The whole reason why I was like, this is such a beautiful, hallmarky, and truly Disney-esque movie, because real life doesn't work like that. I think we should give people a chance, you know, a chance to mess up. And if they mess up, then we're like, okay, I gave you a chance. You fucked up. You're done. You've reneged that right for my trust. To have my trust. I don't have to deal with you. But it was different in the movie because if they didn't, they all die. So that was kind of a different situation. But I feel like people or kids could come away from this thinking, oh, look at that guy over there with that mustache and that kidnapping van. But you know what? The movie was like, nah, I can't prejudge people. I mean, my mom did say stranger danger, but if he says he wants to give me candy, I should give him a chance. And if I tell him I trust you, everything will be okay. Because I have to make that first move. That's what I'm kind of like... I hope parents sit down and talk to their kids and be like, look, this is a wonderful message. However, just remember, we do not live in that world where ghost ghouly things will come up. Yeah, maybe as a result that happened, but we're not Disney humans. We're human humans. And human nature is human nature. It is what it is. We're competitive and we're aggressive species. Like, we are animals. It is what it is. We're just more civilized. However, do you think if we had all the laws in place that we do now, we'd be as civilized as we are? Do you think if you didn't know there were cameras and surveillance everywhere, or a huge sentence you could get to go to jail for something you did, that you would be as civilized as you are? That you would see something and not steal it? How many times have you been, for people who can drive, how many times have you been speeding down the road when it's 65 and you know, okay, there's an 80 miles per hour thing where if everyone's going 80, it's fine. But there's a long stretch of road and your little Honda is like, really like the way this road feels on my fucking wheels, man. And you're like, you know, I like the way it feels on your wheels too. Let's go. And you pump it up to 90 and test it. And then you approach this clearing. You know those little roads that kind of cut into the other highway across from you that police like to hide in? Do you think for 1 second that if that wasn't there, you wouldn't keep speeding? The only reason you slow down is when you see a cop? Like, come on, there's a reason why we are a lot more civilized now. Like, people have this misconception and this fantastical notion that, you know, we don't need as much this, we don't need as much that, because of how many of us there are. Yeah, we do. In primal societies, you know what people did? Tribe over here, tribe over there. We trade, we have a common interest, we keep it at that. You cross my territory or you hurt me, we fight. People die, we move on. Now, people don't really want to do war and stuff anymore, so they have rules in place to avoid that, especially because people at their core are very primal. Just look at Black Friday to get a very good idea of what that's like. Just take a rich and elegant lady's baby and run away with it or put it in danger and see how all of that elegance just falls away all of a sudden and she becomes a raging animal that is not pretty at all. She is ready to kill everything in her path. Just watch how animalistic and scary a father becomes when you mess with his woman or his kids. Like, those little split moments of rage and instinct that you can see in human faces kind of reminds us that we're not really civilized. We're domesticated, but, you know, that civilized thing is an illusion without all those laws. And even still, you can still get burned by people. I have trusted people in the past, and it has, like, I paid for it. I was that person where I was, like, nice to everyone and kind to everyone, and people gave me a story about how they were hurting and how they felt this and they felt that. I would believe them, and it was great because I was a bleeding, suckered fool, and I would give the clothes off my back for people until I realized that the more I gave is the more they took and the less they respected me and the more they wanted to hurt me. So I stopped trusting people. I distanced myself from people. I vet people very carefully, and the minute I find out that someone isn't trustworthy, I cut them off. You're dead to me, because having someone like that around is toxic. You cannot trust them. If they're ready to hurt you when you've trusted them, they will hurt people that you love. So I do not think for 1 second that Raya is too mistrusting, because that's exactly what happened to her. That girl stabbed her in the back that she was friends with. She trusted that girl. That girl pretended to be her friend and pretended to like her, and then stabbed her in the back. And as a result, not only was her father killed, or I guess put into suspension because it's a Disney movie, you can't have them actually die. But if there was no cure or nothing for that, he would have been dead. He would have been just turned to stone forever. That happened, but also millions of other people died or turned into stone. So that's a word to the wise. I feel like that bigger message is lost there somehow. Like, look at what happened in the beginning. And I don't think even if we had dragons nowadays, no matter how many dragons, no amount of mystical creatures, could change the very scary thing that is animal nature and instinct to not only mistrust people for survival and defense sake, but also on the people side who do that to be predatory and to be opportunistic. They see you're sticking out your neck. If you're a deer and you see a lion or a wolf and you're like, I trust you, and you walk up to them and you give your neck, you think the wolf is gonna be like, oh, that's so sweet, you're good. No, the wolf is gonna see an opportunity. Look at this fucking fool. Just like what Namari did in the beginning. So I think that's an important lesson, and I like that this movie presented this, because this is something that we do need to talk about. We want to fix the world, but I feel like a lot of the people who have solutions, well, a lot of the people who are saying that we should fix the world don't really have solutions, but the ones that they're proposing, they're relying too much on everybody being perfect, and that's not realistic. And I think that's the conversation we have to have with the younger generation that's coming up after us. Yes, you want to give people a chance. You want to look at people as individuals and not as a whole. You want to unite with people. At the same time, you have to be wise enough to know how to protect yourself while also trying to strengthen your character. So you have to juggle those two things. It's a balancing act. But I want to hear from you guys. What did you think the grand message was for Raya and The Last Dragon? Do you think that the message of unity was told well? I still think it was an excellent story. I loved it. It was simple, but considering it's a kid movie, it was pretty good. And I want to hear from you guys. How would you fix that society? Because even when they were trying countless times to bring those people together, people were still fighting, because you can't make people like you. You can't make people trustworthy. That's impossible. Anyways, thanks so much for watching. This has been Ultiori. You ask, we answer.